All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. Lots of interesting stories. Impeachment heats up. We've got all of that. But one of my favorite stories, there's so many great ones, as always, every day, is Rudy versus Trump.
Yes, as the White House turns.
It has begun.
Yeah.
It has begun. So don't miss that story. That story is awesome. All right, let's get right to it, Anna. What do you got?
All right, it's a big day today when it comes to the impeachment investigation, so let me give you those details. The House Intelligence Committee has officially completed its report on the impeachment investigation. It has now gone to the House Judiciary Committee, which will decide whether there is enough evidence to draft articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. Now, today's first hearing occurred on the House Judiciary Committee, and what they did was they invited constitutional experts on to discuss and testify as to whether or not there's enough evidence. We will get to that part of this story later. But for the purposes of this story, I want to talk about the report that was conducted by the Intelligence Committee. Now, in this report, of course, there was information that we've already discussed, public information that was presented during the public hearings, but we also have some new information from this 300-page report. So let me give you those details. Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff released the call records of Representative Devin Nunes. Schiff said during a press conference that it's deeply concerning if members of Congress may have also been complicit in digging up dirt on the president's political rival. Now, there were apparently call logs shared in this report. The call logs do not specify the content of what they discussed, but the people implicated here is really the heart of the story. So the call records obtained under subpoena from AT&T also included the time and duration, but again, not the content of the calls placed between Rudy Giuliani, Trump's personal lawyer, Lev Parnas, a Soviet-born business associate of Giuliani's, and John Solomon, a conservative columnist formerly with The Hill, he's no longer with them, who published a series of articles pushing debunked theories about US-Ukraine relations. So I'm gonna get into more details on Solomon in just a minute, but that is pretty damning. So there was a conservative columnist at The Hill who was part of all this, who was having these phone conversations with people like Lev Parnas, who was assisting in attempting to push Marie Yovanovitch out as a diplomat to Ukraine.
So Trump's role in this and Giuliani's calls to him are going to be very relevant. That's coming up in a little bit. But first, I want to split apart two different parts of the story. So first of all, you've got Parnas, Giuliani, and some other characters, including a wife and husband couple that Trump wanted to hire as his personal counsel, all working together, it appears, to some degree, and they appear to be working at the behest of some Ukrainian folks.
Interests.
Right,
yeah.
And so I say folks because people, companies, it's not perfectly clear yet. So Tonsing, who is one of those lawyers that I was referring to, Victoria Tonsing, she gets a retainer from one of them, so she's getting paid. That is part of the reason that her and her husband withdrew from Trump's case because they had a conflict of interest. Giuliani tries to make a deal with them, and that was in an earlier story that we shared with you guys. And he starts working up paperwork on getting money from secret Ukrainians that are not clear yet. Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, who are part of this, get arrested, as you know, right? They get arrested, and one of the charges is that they were working for a foreign actor, okay? So they've got this little scam going to further corruption in Ukraine. And the way that they're gonna further that corruption is by getting our ambassador to the Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, fired.
And what they did was what it appears from what we know so far in this report, they worked with or colluded with members of the media, in this particular case, John Solomon over at The Hill, to push these debunked conspiracy theories about Ukraine and specifically Marie Yovanovitch.
So let me continue on that path then. So Sean Hannity also gets implicated in these calls. Giuliani's calling him, then Trump goes on the program right afterwards. And so there's calls to Trump. We're gonna bring that in a second. But I want you to be super clear on John Solomon and Sean Hannity, the media figures here. If they were all conspiring on a policy issue, hey, you know what? You want tax cuts for the rich? Hey, so do I, tax cuts for the rich. And they were all doing that just because they agree on policy, there'd be nothing wrong with it at all, in my opinion. So the president's personal lawyer is talking to a news guy. They all have an agenda. If the agenda is policy driven, who cares? Okay.
Especially since they're opinion people, right? A columnist shares opinion. Sean Hannity, as we all know, does nothing but opinion, very light on facts. Go ahead.
Yeah, but in this case, so why is it a concern? Because even if you just look at the part without the public officials, the part we've been talking about right now, it's a different situation altogether. If Giuliani, Cenk, who also keeps appearing on Fox News, and others involved are taking money from a foreign actor, because that would make, especially if they don't record it, that is a very serious crime. They're foreign agents and they're not reporting that they're foreign agents. That's a technical term. It doesn't mean that they're, dun 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 dun. Okay, so so that's a very serious crime, and why Parnas and Furman have been arrested already.
Yes.
Okay, so that puts John Solomon in a lot of trouble if he knew about the payments, or maybe he was just being a patsy and he was being used by those guys and didn't know about the payments. We don't know. Same goes for Sean Hannity. Now, the second part is even more troubling. That is when public officials get involved. The two public officials here are Devin Nunes and Donald Trump. Devin Nunes is all over the calls, talking to Parnas, talking to Giuliani,
yes.
His office talking to him repeatedly, and Trump is all over the calls. Now, in the beginning, we weren't sure that it was Trump because Giuliani keeps calling the White House, okay? And then there are these numbers that are called, what is it, 1 or -1? It's a weird thing.
It's a -1 number, and that usually indicates that it's a phone call from within the White House. But I have the specifics, and look, there's a lot of detail, so unfortunately we're gonna have to go to a lot of graphics. But I wanna make sure that you guys have all the details, you have all the facts, and then we'll discuss, okay?
Yeah, so just last thing before Anna gives you those details. So if public officials are involved, well, then we've got public corruption, and that is a much bigger deal.
Yes.
So Trump's already obviously being impeached for that. We're in the middle of the impeachment hearings. This is part of what he's being impeached for. But Devin Nunes is the main Republican representing the Republicans on the Intelligence Committee, pretending to be a neutral actor here, saying, oh, I've got no conflict of interest, I got no issues here. It turns out, no, he's neck deep in this potential crime. So at a bare minimum, he should have recused himself. And after Anna gives you the details, I'll show you how Rudy Giuliani accidentally admitted it was Trump who was involved.
All right,
it's awesome.
So let's continue focusing a little more on the role of media actors in what was going on. So according to Talking Points memo, Parnas was in contact with Solomon, that's the conservative columnist at The Hill, who's no longer with The Hill, 6 times over the phone in the 48 hours before Solomon published a piece about Ukraine. The piece went after Marie Yovanovitch, that was the ambassador to Ukraine, while claiming Ukraine meddled in the 2016 election. Now, we already know that claim that Ukraine meddled in the 2016 election is debunked. It is a conspiracy theory that has been pushed by Donald Trump and conservatives who want to defend him. There is absolutely no indication that Ukraine meddled in our election. Russia meddled in our election. Let me give you more. So on March 20th, 2019, the day the Hill opinion piece was published, Mr. Parnas again spoke with Mr. Solomon for 11 minutes. Shortly after that phone call, President Trump promoted Mr. Solomon's article in a tweet. So they're working together. Solomon's, publishing these articles that push these debunked conspiracy theories, and then members of Trump's administration, not members of Trump's administration, but President Trump himself actually promoted that article, okay?
So it's interesting, before Giuliani accidentally confirmed that it was Trump, you could tell that it was Trump already, because Giuliani makes a quick call to the White House, and then next thing you know, Trump is tweeting about Solomon's article, and Solomon is the writer who is collaborating with all these people. Again, we don't know if Solomon was part of taking payments. If he was, he should be arrested. But he might have just been like, oh yeah, who do you need fired? I'm a conservative knucklehead. I'll write whatever you want. Oh my God, I'm in the inner circle. So that's also possible. So his best defense is, I was an idiot and I didn't know they were getting paid.
Exactly, yes. And look, that kind of stuff does happen in the media all the time, where journalists who aren't even supposed to be doing any opinion stuff will get a scoop on something, right?
Yes.
And the scoop is really just a government official who's leaking something, and they usually have an agenda behind that leak. Let me give you more. On April 1st, Solomon published a piece claiming that Joe Biden got a Ukrainian prosecutor ousted while the prosecutor was investigating a company linked to Biden's son Hunter. On April 7th, Solomon published a story connecting Yovanovitch to the Biden allegations. So again, for the billionth time, the prosecutor who was ousted, the prosecutor that Biden wanted ousted, was actually not investigating corruption in Ukraine. The investigation had become stagnant, and Joe Biden, along with other world leaders, wanted him gone so a proper investigation could continue. On April 25th, shortly after Solomon published another piece alleging an Obama-Ukraine 2016 election interference plot, Giuliani received a call from an unknown -1 number that lasted 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Minutes later, Mr. Giuliani held a brief 30-second call with Sean Hannity, the report said, adding that Hannity hosted Trump on his show that evening and asked Trump about the Solomon story. So again, they're all working together. You have Hannity and Solomon, both members of the media, working with Giuliani and Donald Trump in pushing these debunked conspiracy theories out there. And as we all know, eventually the US ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, was fired. So Cenk, you wanna chime in before I give you more?
Yeah, so I can't wait to give you the Rudy stuff, so I'm going to. Okay. So Rudy Giuliani in a tweet talked about this issue. Now Rudy keeps calling the White House and keeps getting his calls returned from blocked numbers, so you can't tell who it is, but he keeps calling this -1 number, okay? So, but no one ever said what the number was. So it looks like, based on the timing of when Giuliani makes the call and then Trump takes action, it looks like it's Donald Trump, but we didn't know for sure until Rudy tweeted out this. They're already taking away Donald Trump's right to call witnesses, cross-examine, confront his accusers, or be represented by counsel at hearings. Now he can't talk to his counsel on the telephone? Oops, you just admitted that you were talking to Trump.
God, he's so dumb. He's so dumb. You know, there's a story out today about how the Trump administration has banned Rudy Giuliani from making appearances in the media, particularly Fox News. And that might be the smartest thing Trump has ever done in his entire life.
Yeah, and so we're gonna get to that drama a little bit later. If you miss any part of the show, tyt.com/join to become a member and get the whole show anytime you want. But back to Hannity, I just can't help, this is such a fun quote. So Trump hears all this, sees the report. Did he read the hundreds of pages of the report? Of course not, it didn't have any cartoon characters in it. Although
no illustrations.
That's right, but to be fair, it did mention his name a lot. Okay, so, and it's damning. I mean, you got the new calls that show that they're all connected, but the overwhelming evidence is from 17 different diplomats and people inside his administration saying, yes, there was a quid pro quo, yes, we held up the aid, yes, it was for personal and political gain of the president. So he watches all that and then he says this: I watched Hannity, Sean Hannity, I watched Laura Ingraham, I watched Tucker Carlson, I watched a lot of other legal scholars.
Oh my God.
Okay, they're not.
Oh my God.
Those are not legal scholars. But remember his main thing was, hey guys, I'm too busy to deal with this nonsense impeachment. I'm going to talk to NATO, I'm going to do important foreign deals, etc. Meanwhile, he comes in and is like, I watched everybody on the Fox News lineup, and all those legal scholars agree I didn't do anything wrong. No quid pro quo. Oh my God.
If ever you needed just a single piece of evidence to indicate that mediocrity doesn't actually exist in America, that would be it.
Yeah, and so he went on to say a little bit later, he said, I watched a very terrific former special prosecutor, you know Ken, and Ken is a talented man and a smart man. He's referring to Ken Starr, who appears on Fox News. Ken Starr is the person who did a thing closest to an actual witch hunt. he went after Bill Clinton on a real estate deal and was like, oh, I don't have him on that. And then he investigated 7 other things and he's like, I couldn't get anything on him. He's totally innocent on these things. Oh, I know, I'll investigate his sex life. And so apparently that's a talented prosecutor who should be trusted on these issues that went after impeachment on a totally tangential sexual affair as opposed to the real estate deal. But on him, they have him dead to rights on every single legal problem and violation that he's got. But Ken Starr comes on and goes, oh, I can't believe they're doing impeachment of a president on flimsy charges. I mean, it is a comedy. It's an absolute comedy. If you put it in a movie, nobody would believe it. They'd say this is the most over-the-top thing you've ever seen in your life. By the way, Fox News does actually have a legal scholar. His name is Andrew Napolitano. And today he said, if I was in the House, I would vote to impeach. This is very clear illegality. So
yes. It's frustrating. I mean, look, there are higher standards when it comes to the behavior of jurors in a criminal case. Right? Like you're not supposed to have a bias that clouds your judgment on a particular defendant. In this case, there's nothing but bias. There's nothing but partisan politics, and it's disgusting. Because look, what's really at stake? This is beyond Donald Trump. Donald Trump is one person, this is one administration. But the outcome of this impeachment process is gonna determine a lot about what future presidents can do. And so, look, it's very likely that he's going to be acquitted in the Senate, not because he should be, but because of partisan politics. And what does that mean for the future of the country? What does that mean when it comes to executive power? This sets a precedent that indicates, hey, if you solicit the help of a foreign government in digging up dirt on your political opponent to help you in your re-election campaign, it's okay, there's precedent for it.
100%, and that's a question Democrats should really pound away at. So are the Republicans saying that we can ask any foreign country for any amount of assistance in our campaigns? Because that's an important thing to know. Because if that's what you're saying, all right, is it okay for the Democratic Party to go ask China for billions of dollars in assistance in investigating all the Republicans in Congress? Because that's the standard you're saying is totally okay. Because Trump definitely did that. Even the Republicans can't argue that he didn't ask Ukraine to investigate Biden. It's in the transcript or the semi-transcript. He himself has admitted it over and over and over again. And I know this because I talked to other legal scholars like Kyle Kalinske and John Idarola and Emma Vigeland.
Damn, way to throw them under the bus like that, Cenk.
Well, they're not
dirty.
I was trying to make sure that I didn't name any lawyers. I, on the other hand, am a lawyer and a bit of a legal scholar myself.
Okay, so we're quickly entering tricep territory, so I'd like to move on, okay? All right.
Okay, yes.
So let's move on to Devin Nunes' response to all of this. So, the House Intelligence Committee has released its impeachment report, and in it, there are call logs between Devin Nunes and Lev Parnas, who is Rudy Giuliani's business associate. Now, this is pretty incriminating to say the least, and Devin Nunes has responded to it in a Trump-like fashion. Take a look.
What about the reports tonight that are just breaking that reveal multiple calls between you, this guy Parnas, and Rudy Giuliani? My sources are telling me that 3 of the 4 so-called calls were apparently to just Giuliani and maybe on Parnas's phone in under a minute. Is that true?
Well, it's even better than that. First of all, you have to remember the House Intelligence Committee, we are the oversight committee. We have Americans and foreigners contact us every single day with information.
Did you ever talk to this guy, Les Parnas, or whoever his name is?
You know, it's possible, but I haven't gone through all my phone records. I don't really recall that name. You know, I remember the name now because he's been indicted. But why would CNN rely on somebody like this? You know, and I'll go back and check all my records, but it seems very unlikely that I would be taking calls from random people.
Okay, so want to know what CNN's relying on? CNN's relying on the official House Intelligence Committee report, which includes call logs. And in those call logs, can we please take a look at this graphic, this photo? It shows the 4 instances in which Devin Nunes was in touch with Lev Parnas.
Or as Hannity says, like this guy, Les Parnas or whoever he is.
Right.
Hannity is also in the call logs. So Giuliani will call Hannity and then that night Trump will go on Hannity's program and talk about how Biden is doing corruption in Ukraine. All this connected back to Lev Parnas.
Yes.
Hannity is perfectly aware of it. And this great comedy duo coming out here and be like, well, I mean, Parnas, I don't know who that guy. Sean, you know who he is? Because I don't know who he is. I mean, we're in the call logs, but I mean, I don't know who they are, right?
It's pathetic. And there, again, this is all based on evidence. This isn't based on any hearsay. These are actual call logs that have been subpoenaed by congressional investigators at AT&T, right? So let me give you a quick refresher on why this is so relevant, okay? Because this all really centers on the US ambassador to Ukraine, former US ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, who was ousted by the Trump administration because she was actually trying to root out corruption in Ukraine. So Trump also, so Hannity was ousted, I'm sorry, Hannity also was outed for having coordinated with President Donald Trump, Giuliani, and Donald Trump Jr. to take down former Ukraine ambassador Marie Yovanovitch in the House Intelligence Committee report, right? So you have Devin Nunes involved, you have Hannity involved, and then when it comes to Donald Trump himself, he tries to use the exact same, strategy that you just saw Devin Nunes use. So Trump also claimed that he didn't know Parnas or his associate Igor Fruman, but the men were photographed with Trump and his GOP allies literally dozens, guys, dozens of times and seen in multiple videos.
You could tell because when Trump was first asked about him, he's like, I don't know, there might be some pictures of me with him, but that doesn't mean I know him. That means, oh my God, he knew him so well. Like when he says there might be some pictures, that means he had a lot of different contact with him and is positive that he's been pictured with him, and it turns out dozens of times and on video. So look, they're all involved, but they're involved in different ways. Like I doubt Hannity had anything to do with taking money from Ukrainian interests because he's already incredibly rich from being a Fox News talk show host. So he wouldn't care about any of that. But if Trump told him to throw our own ambassador to Ukraine under the bus because Trump wanted to smear his political opponent, Hannity would be all in for that. He'd be like, oh yes, okay, you want to take out an honest American diplomat to help you win an election. Oh, glad you called, I'm your guy. So that part is not at all surprising.
So finally, I want to go to one other incredibly lame defense that people are using. And this is Greg Jarrett floating the possibility that maybe it wasn't Devin Nunes on the phone call with Lev Parnas.
The only thing new that I picked out of yesterday's was this communication between Devin Nunes, Rudy Giuliani, and the White House. In what way, if any, is that problematic?
Well, we just don't know because we don't know the details. In fact, it's a call log. Does that mean that Devin Nunes was actually on the call or somebody else?
No, it was Devin Nunes' neighbor.
Oh no, I got it.
He confiscated Devin Nunes' phone and decided to randomly call Lev Parnas.
No, to be fair, there is some chance it was Devin Nunes' cow.
Oh, good point.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, because he's suing his own cow. Maybe this is how they had the falling out. So yeah, that happens often. Hey, there's this conspiracy with guys who are taking money from foreign actors and are foreign agents who then later get arrested. And I meant to call Devin Nunes' wife. Right? Golly gee, it's Devin Nunes on the phone 4 different times. How did that happen? Yeah, no. Well, good try, Greg Jarrett. Okay, but not buying it.
Yeah, this is why the hashtag Nunes got caught went viral on social media.
Yeah,
because he got caught. He had these phone calls. There's no way around it. Now the question is, what was discussed in those phone calls? I don't know if we're gonna find out, but I hope we do. Yeah,
look, there are a bunch of serial bunglers, but we're having debates with clowns here as usual. So Devin Nunes is. And obviously, at a bare minimum, has a conflict of interest and should have never been involved in these hearings. Instead, he was the leader of the Republicans in the hearings in the Intelligence Committee. Because the Republicans, they don't care about ethics at all. The law is totally optional. Working with these crooks to further your own political and personal interests is just par for the course. So one political party in this country is totally off the rails. And they don't seem to care about the rule of law, the Constitution, or even reality at all anymore.
We got to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to show you some of the incredibly important highlights from the House Judiciary Committee's hearing on the impeachment today. We'll be right back.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. Back on the Young Turks. Let's start with YouTube Super Chat today for comments. Izzy Sanchez Jr. has a comment that I wasn't sure that I could read, but I've decided I'm going to. For Trump and all the GOP reps involved, tick, tick, and mother flowering tick. Like, okay, I think you read that. Geek Speak 10 says, is it time to convene the convention yet to update and revise the Constitution? It's basically a dead document at this point. No, look, agree and disagree. So we do need a convention to propose an amendment to get all private financing out of politics, get all the money out of politics. Look, I'm not on the board anymore, but obviously I still 100% believe in the mission, wolf-pac.com, okay? So wolf-pac.com to make that happen. But the document is not at all dead. But we have to make sure that we abide by it. If we don't abide by it, and that's what this whole impeachment proceeding is about, well, then it is dead. Then impeachment doesn't matter, none of the clauses matter, because basically one party has said, I'm just not gonna follow it. So we can't let them get away with that. One more from YouTube Super Chat, and we thank you every time you use it. Corey Brown says, Trump company used Cheney's New York Times play to oust an ambassador. They fed a story to a media outlet to use that outlet's credibility to elevate the lie. Cheney did it with the Times to justify an invasion. Trump did it for personal crimes. Corey, that is 100% right. So excellent analogy, that's exactly what they did. In fact, Valerie Plame, who they partly did it about, and they did it in a couple of different ways, but Valerie Plame was one of the people that you're talking about, is on the show today.
Yeah.
So Anna's gonna interview Valerie Plame in the third hour of the Young Turks. I'm gonna interview James Thompson, who was a great Justice Democrat, and so Valerie's running for office. James is not running for office, but James got cancer, and the story of what happened with him is heartbreaking. He's gonna come on the show and talk about it, give you a sense of how private insurance in this country really works. So make sure you don't miss the third hour of this show. And of course, the last half hour is just for members. So that's tyt.com/join to become a member. Now, look, guys, I got a lot more tweets. I'll do it as quickly as I can. This is just a fun one. Seth Jones says, new hashtag TYT live t-shirt incoming, warning, you're entering tricep territory.
Oh my God, okay.
Shop tyt.com. Okay, Riley Grady says, Devin Nunes looks like a shook dog. No, he looks shook dog, sorry.
I like that he looks like a shook dog too.
That's both, that's also true. Basshead 3030 says, Trump and Giuliani are the quid pro bros. Although they might not be bros anymore, as you'll see a little bit later in the program. Animal writes in Mexico City for work and loving listening to the impeachment and watching TYT live from here. Hashtag buy Trumplicia, okay, as in Felicia. Trumplicia, okay, last one. David says, Cenk, this is unrelated but breaking news. Danny Heck announced his retirement today. Joshua Collins is now running unopposed in Washington 10 for the moment. Joshua has a much greater chance to win now. So we had Joshua Collins on the show, a progressive candidate in Washington 10. You should go find him and support him. Now incoming, guaranteed the establishment Democrats are gonna be like, no, let's send in someone incredibly rich instead. But remember, the real progressive in that race. So thank you for that breaking news. All right. Anna.
One other announcement, this Friday, I'm invited to speak on a panel about immigration. This is a panel that's put together by the California Immigrant Policy Center, and it starts at 2 p.m. in Los Angeles. And this is gonna be a great, powerful panel. It's titled Our Stories, Our Power. And if you're interested in attending, you can reserve a spot. All you have to do is send an email, and that email address is at the bottom of this graphic. RDiaz, that's RDIAZ at caimmigrant.org. caimmigrant.org, okay? It's again, December 6th, this Friday at 2 p.m. All right, great. Let's keep talking about what's happening today with the impeachment investigation.
Let's do it.
All right. The House Judiciary Committee is conducting its public hearing on the impeachment investigation, and it's up to them to decide whether or not there is enough evidence to draft articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. Now, in order to help them make this decision, they have called witnesses, and these witnesses are all constitutional experts. The Democrats have called on 3 individuals to share their expertise. Republicans have called on 1 person, and that 1 person is Jonathan Turley. Now, let me give you more details on who these people are, and then I'll tell you what Jonathan Turley has to say, because he is the only constitutional expert who has disagreed with the other constitutional experts. The witnesses include Harvard law professor Noah Feldman, Stanford law professor Pamela Karlan, University of North Carolina law professor Michael Gearhart, and George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley. The first 3 witnesses were asked to testify by the committee's Democrats, and Turley was asked or called on by the panel's Republican members. Now, every single one of them, with the exception of Jonathan Turley, said that there is enough evidence to impeach Donald Trump, okay? Now, Jonathan Turley disagrees. Turley said his impeachment process, or this impeachment process, would harm every future president. He said impeachment was not wrong because Trump acted properly or because Congress had no legitimate reason to investigate, but rather because it was being rushed.
Okay, it's a preposterous claim.
Yeah.
So Jonathan Turley is a really interesting intellectual, and it is very hard to pin him down on his ideology. And he vociferously opposed the Bush administration, but often had critique, and oftentimes legitimate critique of the Obama administration. So in the Trump years, he's been all over the board, but that makes sense because he's not being a political actor. I hope not, at least. He's giving his legal opinions, and it might fall on different sides depending on what the issue is. So he's a guy that I generally respect. I've had him on the show many times, actually, back in the day when I was on MSNBC and I believe on the Young Turks. But he has taken a curious stance here.
Yes.
And so he acknowledges that that impeachment is a completely political process and has had a whole range and a whole history. So, for example, Andrew Johnson was impeached without even any articles of impeachment. They went straight to a vote. So you can do that. It was perfectly legitimate, and he was in fact impeached. He was not convicted in the Senate, but he was impeached in the House. So but he says the gold standard is Watergate, where they took 2 years to do it. Well, first of all, there is no constitutional requirement that it take 2 years, and I'm positive that Professor Turley knows that. Second of all, he can't be unaware that that would go past Trump's term. So then I wonder if he is being political, because what kind of an absurd argument is you should do a process that would take so long it would be past the election and maybe a whole nother year.
Right.
Well, that's disingenuous. Basically, you're saying don't impeach him.
Yeah, he was quoted as saying fast is not good for impeachment. So that's really the basis of his entire argument. He doesn't get into the details of whether or not he finds the evidence against Donald Trump legitimate or illegitimate. He didn't exonerate Trump of any wrongdoing. His main argument is things are moving too quickly, this is not good. And he kind of fearmongers about what this could mean for the future of executive power, when in reality, he should be more concerned about what this means if Donald Trump is, asking political, or I should say foreign governments to dig up dirt on his political rivals, and he gets acquitted in the Senate. What does that mean for executive power in the future? What does that mean for the type of precedent it sets for the future? He doesn't get into any of that. He just says this is moving too quickly.
Yeah, it's a very poor argument in my opinion, and in the opinions of, by the way, almost every other law professor in the country. I mean, the Republicans had to stretch and stretch. Remember, if they had a law professor that was going to come out and say, no, they don't have him at all, this is outrageous, and this is not a crime, and this is not impeachable, they would have gone with that professor. The best they could find was a guy going, well, that's a little too fast.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And again, Democrats have 3 constitutional experts, all of whom agree that there's enough evidence to impeach Donald Trump. Republicans only called 1 person, Jonathan Turley, and his strongest argument is that this is moving too quickly. I do want to go to some sound of Turley from today. Let's take a quick look.
I get it. You're mad. The president's mad. My Republican friends are mad. My Democratic friends are mad. My wife is mad. My kids are mad. Even my dog seems mad. And Luna's a golden doodle, and they don't get mad. So we're all mad. Where is that taking us? Will a slipshod impeachment make us less mad? Will it only invite an invitation for the madness to follow every future administration? That is why this is wrong.
Yeah.
Wow, real strong argument there.
Yeah, I got news for you. That's not a legal argument. So look, I don't mind him being lighthearted and talking about his dog, but these are not remotely convincing legal arguments. This is the best that the Republicans have to offer. And look, I'll tell you when someone's legitimate and illegitimate. Jonathan Turley is a fascinating, legitimate, interesting professor, but here he's making claims that are unsubstantiated and look, to me from the outside, I'm happy to have him on the show and we'll ask him to come on the show, but appear to be disingenuous. I'll give you, to be fair to him, more of what he said in terms of why he's concerned about it. He said the record is neither complete nor compelling on proof of an impeachable offense. Really? They talked to 17 diplomats and Trump administration officials. They very clearly said that there was quid pro quo. They very clearly said that he asked for help from a foreign government, which you know, Professor Turley, is illegal. And the transcript that he himself released indicates that he did ask for assistance against a political opponent. I mean, they've got him 8 ways to Sunday. What do you need it for it to be complete?
Right.
18 witnesses, 19 witnesses? Instead of having these impeachment hearings last this period of time, you need to go 2 years or 3 years? This is really one of the weakest defenses I have ever seen from a really smart attorney.
And what's really interesting is he did take part in the impeachment process when it came to Bill Clinton. And we have video showing that he had a very different approach back in 1998. Let's take a look.
Executive power exhibits the same physical properties as a gas in a confined space. When you expand the space, the gas will fill the space. You should not be misled. Your decision will define executive power and authority. If you decide that certain acts do not rise to impeachable offenses, you will expand the space for executive conduct. And we will have to live with that expansion. No matter how you feel about President Clinton, and I don't dislike President Clinton, I voted for President Clinton. But no matter how you feel about President Clinton, no matter how you feel about the independent counsel, by his own conduct, he has deprived himself of the perceived legitimacy to govern. You need both political and legal legitimacy to govern this nation, because the president must be able to demand an absolute sacrifice from the public at a moment's notice. And when there's a question of legitimacy, it has to be resolved in a way that it doesn't divide what Franklin referred to as irregular actions.
I just find it fascinating how the burden was much heavier for Bill Clinton as opposed to Donald Trump. I mean, he's talking about political legitimacy in that clip.
Yeah. So no, that is very curious. So I know that he had that stance in the Clinton impeachment hearings, but hearing it again in saying that you should be concerned about expanding executive power, when today he's testifying, hey, you should be worried about limiting executive power. And before he was saying, look, it's by almost any admission, it's a small violation that Bill Clinton did, lying about a sexual affair, okay, on a case that began as not at all related to that affair in any way, shape, or form. And so most people get caught in affairs, lie about it. They don't just voluntarily come out and go, oh yeah, you got it, brother. Oh, you're asking me generally about my sex life. Let me tell you all the things I did wrong. That is not usually how politicians or anyone else behaves. So, okay, whatever you think of Bill Clinton's quote unquote crimes, any legal expert would have to agree that Donald Trump's crimes are at least as bad, if not significantly worse. I mean, that is obvious. So for him to say Clinton's so-called crime was so egregious that you can't expand executive power, and then to turn around to say Donald Trump's crimes are, well, I mean, look, I don't know that you've investigated for 2 years yet, and I maybe call a couple more witnesses, and I'm worried about limiting executive authority. That is very inconsistent and bizarre. Because look, when Jonathan Turley represents Republicans or Democrats, he's being a lawyer and he's supposed to represent those people. But this is different. He's being called as an expert. He's not an advocate for any side here. And in both cases, he appears to be making political arguments. One time against a Democrat, now in favor of a Republican. And he's doing it fairly aggressively on fact patterns that look to be contradictory to his own claims.
Yes.
So that is weird and troubling. But most importantly, for your purposes, if you don't care about Jonathan Turley, I don't blame you. This contradictory, very weak defense of Trump is the best that the Republicans could find out of any law professor in the entire country.
Yep, that's right.
That goes to show you the incredible weakness of their case.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear from one of the constitutional experts who's in favor of impeaching Donald Trump and says that there is an abundance of evidence. Her name is Pamela Karlan, and then we will also talk about Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani's ever-widening feud. We'll be right back.